Hello and welcome back to the Card Combo Show, me Chocobilly. Make sure to like and subscribe to get more awesome content. I will also preface this video with apologies for the resolution of some of the cards I'll be showing today. They're still in spoiler mode, so I haven't got the best versions of the card yet. And also I'm going to stop referring to a lot of cards as spoilers, because we are really in the middle of spoiler season right now for Opus 12. Anyway, the cards we're looking at this week are Opus 11 Tifa, Opus 11 Hooded Man, Opus 12 Noctis, Opus 12 Urianger, and Opus 12 Ulmia. You see what I mean by the resolution? Alright, let's get to it. So, the first card, Legend Tifa from Opus 11, a very competitive card. If you're running a 7 deck, she can be a massive pain, and I've been having a lot of fun with her recently. So she's a 5 CP 9k forward. If you control a card named Cloud, the cost for playing Tifa onto the field is reduced by 1 and can be paid with CP of any element. The category 7 forwards other than Tifa you control gain plus 2000 power and brave, and at damage 3, Tifa gains the category 7 forwards you control cannot be broken by opposing summons or abilities that don't deal damage. So the good thing about her damage 3 ability is that it applies to her as well as all the other 7 forwards you control, whereas her plus 2000 power and brave ability applies just to other forwards, not herself. But yes, so first and foremost, Aerith. Definitely not the first card that people have been pairing her with, but I think this is a funny combo because Aerith becomes a 9k brave with a couple of dull abilities which are powerful in their own right. So she has the ability to dull herself to reactivate 3 7 characters, which is very strong. 3 7 characters other than herself though. And then you've also got 1 wind and dull, choose 1 forward you control. It cannot be chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities this turn. So obviously with Tifa's damage ability, it means that your opponent has to focus on dealing damage to your 7 forwards to try and kill them. But if you've got something like Aerith on the field, who is now a 9k brave forward, who also has the ability to just make it so they can't be chosen by summons or abilities, plus she's also got her double wind ability to reduce any damage that's done by 2000 power anyway, so she's a very good defensive card in line with this Tifa. And then you've also got this Aerith as well, who saw a fair amount of play when she first came out. So she has a what's known as a Minwu effect, but basically any damage that is received less than their power, it just becomes 0. There are a fair few cards now that actually kind of deal with this damage reduction, but either way, it's still, if your opponent doesn't have something like BFA or Q-Chaspal to be able to deal with this damage reduction ability, they're gonna be in trouble, because obviously Tifa makes all the forwards become plus 2000, all the 7 forwards plus 2000 power. But then, if they can't deal enough damage over that amount to be able to break something, they're just going to be reset and have no damage on them. So, yeah, it's a bit of a pain. So these two can be a nightmare together. Okay, so Azul and Rosso, so similar sort of thing. They reduce damage that is dealt to them, so this in line with that Aerith effect, or Minwu effect, would be very annoying. Neither of these cards get much play, but they are 7 forwards, so they would gain plus 2000 power and brave off of Tifa, as well as the ability to not be broken by things that don't deal damage. Rude. So I actually have a deck with these two together, and I think it works really well, but I think it's just a fun play anyway. So Rude gains plus 3000 power if you've got Rufus on the field, and he gains first strike if you control a job member of the Turks other than Rude. So if Tifa's there, he immediately becomes a 9k in brave. If you're on 3 points of damage, he also has to be destroyed by damage only, and if you've got, say, the Reino backup, it also means he's first strike. So he is a 9k brave first strike forward that has to be dealt damage. So unless your opponent can start dealing damage outright from a summon or something, because they can't just be blocking because he's got first strike, they're gonna start to have trouble on how to deal with Rude. And a lot of forwards, to be fair, that have first strike, like the Soldier 3rd class. These guys are great because they'll be 7k forwards with Tifa on the field. They've got first strike and brave again, and they also search themselves. So you could have a couple of these guys on the field with Tifa, and they are just big, formidable, and your opponent will have struggled to get rid of them. Obviously they're easier because they'll be on 7k power, but either way, it's still first strike and brave together is a horrible combo to come up against, because they can keep attacking you and their forwards don't go dull. Still got first strike, so it's still a massive defense. Minerva, so a card that hasn't seen play for a while, but she has quite a few good abilities. At the beginning of your main phase 1, select one of the 3 following actions. All the forwards you control gain plus 3,000 power until the end of the turn, so that goes really nicely with Tifa. All characters your opponent controls lose their abilities until the end of the turn. Again, a very formidable ability, and then just draw 1 card. So you can make it so that each turn you're just drawing 3 cards instead of 2, so it's pretty good. But one of Minerva's biggest drawbacks is something like Diablo. Diablo will just... The instance Minerva gets played, even if your opponent isn't running Diablo, they'll still play Diablo somehow because that's what kills Minerva. But with something like Tifa on the field, which means that it has to be dealt with by damage, Minerva will be a 12,000 power forward with Brave. So your opponent's going to have to deal a lot of damage to this card. Even an attack with BFA won't kill Minerva. And Minerva's ability to get rid of your opponent's forwards abilities is very strong with something like that. So this is a very formidable combo. And then finally Cloud. Now Cloud obviously reduces Tifa's cost, but what I like doing is the fact that with this Tifa, it allows you to form quite a large field because your opponent's going to struggle to deal some damage, especially if they're in something like maybe more geared towards Ice, because Ice has got a reasonable amount of outright breaking, but the damage it deals has to be to dull forwards. If they've got Brave, your forwards probably aren't going to be going dull, so they're going to struggle to do that. And normally your opponent's answer to that would be something like Zalera, but again, not going Brave, and even if they are dull, they can't be broken by something that doesn't deal damage. So having quite a few forwards on the field and then playing this Cloud to then just outright break something, that's pretty fun. Also, all your 7 forwards will gain plus 2,000 power off of Tifa, but with Cloud, if they block, they will gain another 1,000 power. If you combo that with something, say, like Rude, who's got First Strike, and will be a 9k, whenever he blocks, he'll become a 10k First Striker. Youch! Alrighty, so Hooded Man. You cannot play Hooded Man or Kane while already in control of either character. Slight spoilers there. And then EX Burst. When Hooded Man enters the field, choose one category 4 forward other than card name Hooded Man in your break zone, add it to your hand. At the end of each of your turns, activate all the category 4 forwards you control. So he's okay, he's good for recursion. It's also, this card is a good example of when EX bursts, like how EX bursts do not apply to the entire card's text ability. It only applies to the recursion of a Final Fantasy IV forward. But yeah, so I'm focusing more on at the end of each of your turns, activate all the 4 forwards you control. So something like Golbez. If you're playing Golbez, then you want Golbez to die, which means you'll probably be attacking with him if your opponent's got forwards. But the chances are they're not going to block it because they don't want Golbez to die, but he gets to stand back up at the end of your turn. So he's effectively got Brave in this regard, but it's just a nice little combo to keep Golbez in the way of your opponent. Palom. So if you're looking at Palom's S there, S, dull 1 active card named Porom, deal your opponent 1 point of damage. So there's no stipulation on the turn you can do this on, so you could dull Porom and Palom, use the S to deal your opponent a point of damage, and then end your turn, and then in their turn, do the same thing again. So just keep on dealing the points of damage, no matter when it is. And, of course, Porom. So it's also good. Hooded Man's great because the fact that he'll reactivate both to then be able to use that S ability, but also Porom's just got a really good ability on her own of pay 1, dull, choose 1 action ability, cancel its effect. That's a really strong ability. Theodore. So, dull 1 active card named Cecil forward and 1 active card named Rosa forward, place Theodore onto the field. You can only use his ability during your turn and if Theodore is in the break zone. So being able to dull those 2 forwards to bring Theodore in and then end your turn and reactivate them is very useful. Zemus, so pay X and dull. Choose 1 lightning forward in your break zone. If it is cost X, play it onto the field. You can only use his ability during your main phase, but being able to use Zemus' ability to bring something like Golbez or Fuseya, so they're just a couple of lightning 4 forwards that you could bring back, but there's a multitude of things, Eliwa for example. But then at the end of your turn, Zemus gets to stand back up and then he could be potentially blocking in your opponent's turn, or, you know, there's a multitude of different things you could do with him. Okay, so Noctis, Opus 12, he is a multicolor Earth Lightning card, who is 3 CP 7k. with the text. When Noctis enters the field, choose one category 15 forward other than card name Noctis in your break zone, add it to your hand. So that's great for being able to get back your things like your Ignises and your Gladios. And when Noctis forms a party and attacks, until the end of the turn, all the forwards you control gain plus 2000 power and haste. That's pretty crazy. He isn't a legend, he's just a rare. Now I realise that he's a multicolour forward, which means you have to pay both the elements to be able to get him on the field, but still that doesn't seem like enough of a limitation on this card, because that last ability is basically the same as Light Rain's S ability, to be able to give haste all your forwards and plus 2000 power. That's just crazy good. So combo that with the likes of Chalinka, so you have Noctis party attacking with something, all your forwards gain brave, Noctis can attack once, give all your forwards haste and plus 2000, and then get him to attack again with something else. Obviously at this point all your forwards have already gained plus 2000 power, but they just gained another 2000 power. That's just nasty. The fact you can put Chalinka back in your hand and then play it again to let Noctis attack and give all your forwards haste. So each turn you could just be playing more and more forwards, giving them all haste, and it just becomes indomitable. Gippal, so another Opus 12 card. The forwards forming a party you control gain brave. When a party you control attacks, all the forwards in that party gain plus 5000 power until the end of the turn. So not only would Noctis give everything plus 2000 power and haste, like just literally everything. The forwards forming a party with Gippal, or sorry, no, that's the forwards forming a party you control, so Gippal doesn't even have to be in the party. They will also gain brave, so they'll be able to stay standing upright. And they will also gain plus 5000 power. That's plus 7000 power with these two on the field in a party attack. That's crazy. They're literally doubling their power. And it stays there till the end of the turn as well, so you can then combo this with something like Hecaton Share. It's just so much potential with these two cards. Yuna. So when Yuna enters the field, if a forward you controlled formed a party this turn, draw 2 cards. Obviously Noctis wants to be partying with people. Ain't no party like an S-Club party. Sorry. Yeah, so Noctis will have partied with something. You play Yuna, draw 2 cards, so she's recurred her value already. But then when Yuna forms a party and attacks, choose one forward, loses 4000 power for each attacking forward, and Yuna can also pay 0 to become any element to pay up to party attack. So you can just party attack with Yuna and Noctis, all your forwards gain plus 2000 power and haste, plus you'll be able to minus 8k one of your opponent's forwards. What? That's just crazy. This and Gippal, it's just, there's so much playability here with parties. Obviously the big thing with parties is that you have to have the forwards on the field long enough to be able to attack, and the chances our opponent will be breaking those forwards to stop them from attacking. But if they don't have an answer in a couple of turns, oh boy, that's just a gut punch right there. Moogle Knight. So he's brave, and if Moogle Knight is dealt damage by a forward, reduce the damage by 3000 instead. If a forward forming a party with Moogle Knight receives damage, reduce the damage by 3000 instead. So not only would Noctis and Moogle Knight be gaining plus 2000 power, all your forwards will be gaining that, but also Noctis and Moogle Knight will take 3000 less damage, which is good for their survivability when party attacking. Ramza, being able to give him plus 2000 power to be able to get him closer to that 10,000 to give him haste, which he would already get from Noctis anyway. But when Ramza attacks, choose one forward of cost 3 or less your opponent controls, break it. That's pretty strong. And chances are if Noctis is partying with something, those 2 forwards on the field will have lowered Ramza's cost by 2. And they will also have given Ramza a plus 2k buff, meaning he's 8k. So if you've got 2 forwards on the field, they party attack, Ramza's on the field, Ramza will become 10k, he can go swinging. Oh boy. Urianger. So he is a lightning water forward, 3 costs 7k. When Urianger enters the field, you may play 1 monster of cost 2 or less from your hand onto the field. When you do so, choose one forward your opponent controls, return it to its owner's hand. So he's on curve, and he's got what might not seem like the best ability in the world, but I think it's very formidable. That, and I love monsters, so I would love it. So you combine him with something like Black Knight. So Urianger enters the field, he brings in Black Knight, and then your opponent's forward gets bounced. If they want to replay that forward and it is of 4 CP or less, Black Knight will break it, so they have to take that into consideration when they want to replay that forward. But if you play Urianger and Black Knight onto the field along with Skeleton, then Skeleton will have gained +2 counters as well, so it'll be even closer to being able to break something with its discard ability. Yeah, so you've paid 3 to be able to bounce something, bring in a monster which is going to break something, and potentially break something else with your Skeleton. That's really good value. Glorka, however, can reduce Urianger's cost to make him 2 CP. Wow, 2 CP to be able to bounce something, bring in a monster that'll probably break something, and gain counters on another monster, which will also be able to break something. There isn't a huge amount of monster breakage in the game, or there is a reasonable amount, but it doesn't get played much because people would rather do things like empty people's break zones or just break forwards. So monsters sometimes can blindside your opponent, and getting more value out of that can really, really surprise them. If you combine this with Whale Zombie, maybe. Urianger comes into the field. Whale Zombie allows you to draw a card. You have paid 2 because of Glorka, so you've just managed to pay effectively 0 to get Urianger and Whale Zombie onto the field. This isn't taking into consideration that when something enters the field, Glorka gets to give something plus 1000k as well, so that's pretty cool. Electric Jellyfish! So, Urianger comes into the field, and again, just use this with Glorka because why not? But Urianger comes into the field, brings in Electric Jellyfish. Electric Jellyfish can then give Urianger haste. You can then discard put Electric Jellyfish into the break zone to then, I don't know, dull one of your opponent's forwards out of the way. You have managed to bounce one of their forwards, you managed to dull one of their forwards out of the way, and you've given Urianger haste, hopefully for 2 CP with Glorka on the field, and you can just go swinging for damage. That's quite surprising. Geos Gyno, or Geos Jano, I don't know how you say it, but when a forward your opponent controls is returned to its owner's hand from the field, if Geos Gyno is not a forward, it also becomes a forward of 7000 power. So, Urianger enters the field, Geos Gyno enters the field, Geos Gyno will then see the forward Urianger is bouncing and then become forward himself. So if you've got Glorka on the field, you will have paid 2 CP for 2 forwards that are both 7k, one of which, Geos Gyno, will have an ability to reduce the damage it takes. That's 1 CP per forward with no downsides whatsoever. And did I mention that you're bouncing a forward as well? The value, oh the value. And Mirror, obviously, if you're using something like Electric Jellyfish where you're putting it into the break zone to get an effect, use Mirror, dull her, get another Electric Jellyfish. Maybe you can then put Urianger back in your hand somehow, and then do it all again. Sid Waff, so we're going slightly off element here, but Sid Waff being able to play monsters onto the field just by a break is really useful. So again, you could Urianger bring in something like Electric Jellyfish, give Urianger haste, put it in the break zone, dull a forward, break Sid Waff, bring Electric Jellyfish back in, maybe give another forward that you played this turn haste, and then dull another forward. You've broken a back up, and you've played Urianger, and you've dulled 2 forwards, you've given 2 forwards haste, and you've bounced something. Again, this card is just such good value. And Une, because why wouldn't you want to bounce Urianger? Bring in 2 monsters, bounce 2 things, and if you're lucky, you've managed to gain haste off of the Electric Jellyfish you'll be bringing anyway. And not to mention the summon that you've cast to use Une. Okay, finally, Ulmia. Again, apologies for the resolution of the card. She is a 2 CP 5k Bard forward that has the text, the ice forwards other than Ulmia you control gain plus 1000 power. At damage 3, she gains dull, choose 1 ice forward, it gains plus 2000 power until the end of the turn, and at damage 5 she gains dull, choose 1 ice forward, until the end of the turn it gains plus 2000 power, haste, first strike, and brave. So she is one of the few cards that can give ice haste, and first strike, and brave. None of those abilities are hugely prevalent in ice. First strike is probably the most. I think the only ice card to naturally gain brave is Yosef, and there's like 1 or 2 that gain haste. 2 CP Squall is one that comes to mind, I can't remember the others, but anyway, pretty decent abilities. The forwards like this I always consider to be kind of more like monsters because the chances are you won't be attacking with them so much, but it's worth noting that Ulmia can give herself the abilities, so she can dull to give herself. So maybe if you've got a way of giving her brave, and then attacking and dulling her, she can then give herself haste, first strike, and brave. It's ironic that she can give herself brave, but she would then be dull, so then she wouldn't be able to make use of it. So you see where I'm coming from. But anyway, yeah. Eduardo. When a job bard you control attacks, your opponent discards one card from his or her hand. Not a great card, but the more bards that get played, the better Eduardo becomes. Hopefully there'll be a bard deck available one day, which I'm really hoping for. But yeah, as I said, if you can give Ulmia Brave and then use those abilities on herself after she's attacked, you also get to make your opponent discard a card. Oh, there you go, Momody. So you could be able to give Ulmia Brave just through that ability. It's a fairly simple ability. There's plenty of ways of doing it, but Momody is probably the easiest way. Snow. So this card didn't even really get played when it got released in Opus 1. So that kind of says a lot about the card itself. But when Snow blocks, choose one forward, dull it. It's an okay ability, and I think if it got released today, people would look at it and be like, it's playable, it's not the worst. But being able to give him plus 2000 power, haste, first strike, and brave, not to mention the fact that it just gets the passive 1k off of Ulmia anyway, it would become a 10k first strike to be able to block and then dull something else. It means that your opponent really has to consider attacking because they're not going to get past the snow unless they deal with him, and there'll have to be a break effect because he's 10k, which is hard to get rid of, and if he does block, then you get to dull something. So it really stifles your opponent's ability to be able to attack. Barts, of course, Barts, the famous free 5th backup. Yeah, there's a tongue twister. But yeah, use Ulmia on potentially herself or something else, and then you play Barts, reactivate all your characters, and use Ulmia again on herself or just something else, because why not? Genesis. So making it so that Genesis is brave and attacking and he is formidable. Your opponent doesn't want to block him because the chance is going to be breaking something because he'll be a 10k first striker. However, your opponent also doesn't want to block him because taking damage means that they have to discard. Chances are that they will end up just taking the damage and discarding because forwards on the field that they want to keep are more valuable to them and are probably more worth than just one card gone from the game. But if they're on 6 damage and they can't take that damage, Genesis is probably going to be killing something. Azure Dragonlessy Suri. So this is more just due to the fact that to give it a bit more survivability, even without damage 3, you could be on no damage whatsoever. Suri becomes a 10k, which is really useful. And you can give it Brave if you're on damage 5, which again, for such a big forward, is quite scary. He can attack, gain you a card back to hand, and then he's still standing upright and your opponent has to deal with that. So, it gets destroyed fairly easily through things like Diablo, but still, these two comboing together could be quite significant. And Phoenix, because paying 4 for Phoenix to deal 2k to your opponent's board, and then bringing Ulmia to then just have a passive 1k to all your ice forwards is decent. If you've got a way of giving Ulmia haste, maybe through something like Belias, which would be a heavy investment, but giving Ulmia haste to then be able to use her dull ability when she does enter the field through Phoenix would then be able to give an ice forward plus 2k haste, first strike, blah 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 blah. So it's a nice little combo that might take your opponent by surprise. Thank you guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. As I said earlier, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm planning on pumping out more videos now as we slowly edge closer towards Opus 12. I'm going to start try and make them weekly again now. As I mentioned, we've got so many more spoilers coming through. There's a lot more cards and there'll be a buttload more combos coming through. So I'll see you in the next video.